From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show. Time to talk about 49ers wide receiver, Chris Conley. I said that slow, even though there's nothing slow about this guy. Chris Conley has got a lot of speed, running a 4.35 when he first came out of college. That made him a good fit for the team that drafted him in the Kansas City Chiefs because they definitely love speed. Chris Conley's 6'2", close to 6'3", over 220 pounds and runs a 4.3. Sounds pretty tremendous athletically. And that's why I want to talk about how Conley brings something different to this wide receiver room. The 49ers have a lot of eclectic style of wide receivers. They have different ways to get open, and they're built different. Kyle uses them in different ways to make his offense go exactly how he wants. And he's really good about using each player's skill set to his best advantage and their best advantage, because ultimately finding out what they're really good at and then putting them using those exact skill sets is the best for your football team. Kyle Shanahan does that as good, if not better, than any other offensive coordinator in the entire league. Why Chris Conley is kind of enticing is the mixture of size and speed. We've seen the 49ers look for speed. We've seen them look for size. And sometimes we've seen them look for size and speed. But finding those guys that have size and speed has definitely been difficult. When you're looking at the 49ers organization, they now have a few guys that are over 6 foot tall, or 6'2". Jawan Jennings, you got Chris Conley, you got Tay Martin. Those are not the norm. Normally, wide receivers in the 49ers ranks are around 6 foot tall. You're talking Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. And Ayuk is one of the best wide receivers in the entire league right now. The way he's getting off coverage, making people miss, the double moves he was pulling off last season and in the playoffs were absolutely spectacular. Deebo is a Swiss Army knife and an absolute weapon that can do whatever you want. Jawan Jennings is a possession receiver that catches the ball and converts on third down. Ray McLeod is another guy that can do some of the Swiss Army knife type things. And just doesn't have as many tools as Deebo, but also is a guy that can convert and can get vertical at times. Then you've got Danny Gray, the speed guy that runs down the field at a rapid pace and is going to make plays over the middle that he could possibly take to the house because he's 4.3 speed. So Chris Conley adds something similar to that. And he's had great production in the NFL. He had really good years in Kansas City and then a stretch from 2018 to 2019 that saw him have an absolutely fantastic couple of years, including 2019 with 775 yards receiving on 47 catches. He also had 5 touchdowns. So this is a guy that's produced in the NFL. He has now played for a few different teams, playing for Kansas City, Jacksonville, Tennessee, and Houston. So he's well-traveled, and he's 30 years old. Those, of course, start becoming the dark days for NFL wide receivers. But a big body that can block, that knows how to get open, who also still is a vertical threat, seems like exactly what the doctor ordered. You have to find a way for the 49ers to keep a 6 wide receiver. Most are definitely hitching their wagon to Ronnie Bell. And I like Ronnie Bell. I think Ronnie Bell's a good possession receiver who has really good hands and has a knack for finding locations to sit down and catch the football. My problems with Ronnie Bell are that he's not big, he's not fast, he's not elite. And I think Chris Conley's not elite, but he is big and fast. And when you put that type of scenario together, you give Kyle Shanahan something he's wanted. Because you now have a player that not only can play the slot like Jawan Jennings, who's comfortable sitting down in zone. He's actually really good at it. Sitting down in zone, catching the ball, and converting. You also have a guy that you can put on the outside at X that can go vertical and catch the ball, but has a 6'2" frame and is able to jump and high point these footballs over cornerbacks. He's a little bit of a matchup problem. You throw in the fact he's got 4.3 speed, and it's starting to sound pretty good, isn't it? The thing with Chris Conley's 4.3 speed, though, is it takes him a little bit to get started. He's gotten a lot better in his press man releases, getting off the line of scrimmage, but just to get to top speed is sometimes looks like a snail. It's slowish. And so he's got to have, time to get moving and going. So catching the ball over the middle of the field, he can do. He just needs to be hit in stride. He needs an accurate passer that's going to hit him in stride so he doesn't have any loss in motion, any hesitation, any slowdown, and he's not going to get as much yak yardage as you would like. He's not the traditional yak attack, yak monster that the 49ers normally get. But those guys don't exactly have the vertical threat. Besides Brandon Ayuk, finding a vertical threat is really difficult. Now, we know Danny Gray is supposed to be that guy, but we haven't seen it yet. I do think Danny Gray is more than just a vertical threat, but I definitely think he provides that to this offense. But that's why I like Chris Conley. I think he has a real shot if the 49ers decide to keep 6 wide receivers to make this team because of his versatility. Versatility is the name of the game with Kyle Shanahan and in Kyle Shanahan's offense. And having a guy that could go in if something happened, heaven forbid, to Jawan Jennings and play in the slot, or if something happened to Brandon Ayuk, go on the outside and be a vertical threat. He also has the size to be a red zone threat. Having 2 seasons in which you scored 5 touchdowns is impressive. That's more than most of the wide receivers on the team, not named Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. How many of those other wide receivers can say they did that? Not many. So having a player with his acumen is very important for the 49ers. I think he's got a real shot to compete and make this team. He will, however, have to beat out Ronnie Bell, who we talked about earlier. And Ronnie Bell is definitely somebody the 49ers really like. Can Chris Conley help on special teams? I think that will be the next question that needs to be answered if he's going to make this 49ers football team. If he can, then he's got a chance to beat out Bell. Of course, he could always end up on the practice squad hoping that the 49ers use him a little bit in games the way that they did with Willie Snead last year. The one thing I do know, Kyle Shanahan can find a role for a 6'2", 220-pound wide receiver that can run a 4.3. The fact that he's had production in the league makes you feel confident he can have production for Kyle Shanahan, who can scheme almost anyone open. That is what's really nice about having Conley. So I do like his skill set. I like his versatility, and I think he'd be a nice asset to the 49ers 53-man roster. But he has to go out there and compete. They're 5 strong at the position, and they have 6, 7, 8 guys that are legit contenders to potentially be a 6 wide receiver if it comes available. Ronnie Bell, Tay Martin, Willie Snead, all possibilities. Even outliers like Daz Newsome have a chance to make this team. So the 49ers don't usually have a player this big that runs that fast. They've tried guys like Kevin White and Jalen Hurd, and they just didn't work out. White was never the player that they thought he was going to be coming out of college, and Jalen Hurd just couldn't get healthy. So I think the 49ers would love to have a player with this particular skill set on their roster. Will there be a roster spot for him? I think that's a big-time question. So what does he have to do to make this team? Well, what he has to do is be consistent. He is a guy that catches the ball away from his body, so I think he'll do a good job of not having too many drops. He needs to make sure that when he goes against players like Charvarius Ward and Deommodore Lenoir, he's able to get off press coverage. That has been something that plagued him in the past. He can prove that is definitely in his rearview mirror. Then he's got all the ability to be able to get down the field vertically and make plays. He's going to have to prove he can do it consistently. He's going to have to stack good days. He's going to have to make himself feel invaluable in the wide receiver room. He's also going to have to make you feel that way in the special teams area. That's one thing he's going to have to do. Brian Snyder's going to have to be convinced that he can help the 49ers on special teams. If he can, he's got a real shot to be a 6 wide receiver. Going to have to do the dirty work. He's going to have to block, catch the ball over the middle. And when he's asked to go vertical, he better run as fast as he can and make something happen. So he's an exciting player to watch during training camp, and I think everyone should keep their eye on Chris Conley and the battle he's going to have with Ronnie Bell to make this roster. One of them will prevail. It'll either be the 7th-round pick out of Michigan, Ronnie Bell, or it will be the former 3rd-round pick of the Kansas City Chiefs, Chris Conley. Only one will probably be left standing unless there's an injury at the position. Hope there's not an injury. I hope we're just talking about really good football players competing for that last spot on the 49ers roster. And if it is, he adds something different to this 49ers team and to this wide receiver room. Size and speed combo that isn't seen on this roster. Got to have something different. Ayuk has the moves. Deebo Samuel's the weapon. Juwan Jennings is the converter of 3rd downs. Ray-Ray McCloud is the kick returner, but also can do a little bit of everything. He can move well in short areas and make those critical contested catches. And Danny Gray is a guy that's got breakaway speed. Having that speed with size could be exactly what helps Chris Conley make this roster. Let me know what you think about Chris Conley and if you think he's got a legitimate chance to make this team. Do you like the player? Do you think he can compete with Ronnie Bell, or do you think the 49ers will go Bell over Conley? I'm curious what your opinion is on Chris Conley. He's a player that I've become fond of by watching his film, not only from what he did in college at Georgia, but also what he did in his stops in the NFL. Pretty fun to watch. Like the video if you can. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Really appreciate it. Getting close to 4K. About 70 subscribers away, and you can help today. It doesn't cost you a thing. Subscribe. It really does a lot for the channel, and I appreciate it. But thank you so much for watching. There's going to be plenty of content coming your way. But until then, stay safe, and remember the right way is always the 49ers way.